In this video, I'm documenting my first structured self case study. As a part of my herbal learning journey and process, I would like to state that this is not advice and is not a recommendation. It is simply a record of my personal observations as a person learning how to work with structure, restraint, and documentation involving herbs and supplements. For me, personally, a case study isn't about proving that something works. It's about learning how my body responds when I change one variable at a time, and how to observe those things without jumping to unnecessary conclusions. Before introducing anything, I documented my baseline. My baseline at the time, my body carried noticeable amounts of background tension, and my mood was generally neutral, but with low to medium range agitation, irritability, and my sleep was consistent but not especially restful. In my notes, I did not frame any of this as good or bad, just as information for a baseline. My intention for the case study was very simple. I wasn't trying to fix it. I was observing whether there were any noticeable changes in my physical tension or general calm over the time of taking the herb. For this case study, the intervention was ashwagandha, specifically a standardized extract known as KSM 66. I chose to work with this form because it's a root-only extract that's commonly discussed in research, which makes it easier to study as a clearly defined variable. I used a consistent amount and consistent timing throughout the observation period. I'm intentionally not going to share dosages or details because this video is educational for my documentation, not supposed to be an instructional video. I will say there may be some instructional videos coming sooner or later, but this is specifically just documentation. In the hours after taking it the first time, nothing dramatic happened at all. There were no sudden emotional shifts, no strong sensations, no immediate feeling of sedation, stimulation. The lack of intensity was actually more useful than you'd probably give it credit for. It kept my focus on long-term effects rather than the momentary first-time impressions that taking it gave me. Over the next few days, I paid attention to patterns rather than the single moments while I was taking it. What I noticed was physical tension felt slightly easier to release when I was resting or calmly standing away from certain tensioners, all that. Not gone, just more accessible. Emotionally, I felt a little less reactive, but my full emotional range was still fully present. I could get angry, I could get sad, I could get a bit agitated, stressed, but there was more opportunity for release. About halfway through this observation period, I would say a little over a week, I made a single deliberate adjustment. Rather than changing ashwagandha itself, I introduced a complementing uh, supplement called L-theanine as a separate variable to observe how it interacted with the existing baseline. The reason I added L-theanine wasn't to intensify any of the effects. I was curious whether it changed the quality of calm rather than the intensity, whether it would feel clearer, duller, smoother, or make me more agitated. But I have heard good things about the combination, so I chose to implement it. After introducing L-theanine, the most noticeable change was that the calm felt slightly smoother. physical tension felt a bit quieter. Without feeling heavy, sedated, emotional, things just felt calmer but still present, not flattened or disconnected from anything. Importantly, it didn't feel overly tiring, overstimulated, or foggy mentally. After observing the combination for a short window, my decision was to hold. I didn't change anything else. I didn't add on, change the timing, or the amounts. At this stage, the goal was just understanding the interaction, not optimizing, making it any better. And currently, I am still taking both together. So, this is an ongoing self study to just see how well it happens. This is about the third week. A bit of a in-depth look on the herb. Something this case study really made clear to me is that when people talk about ashwagandha, they're often talking about very different things. Even when the herb stays the same, like same name, a lot of that difference comes down to how the plant is prepared and standardized. Why branded extracts matter for learning? One reason I pay attention to branded extracts isn't because they're better, but because they're clearly defined. When something is standardized and named, it becomes easier to study as a single variable instead of something that will not be as consistent. In this case study, I used KSM66, which is a root-only extract designed to reflect a balance similar to the original plant, which is still being consistent from batch to batch. From a learning perspective, that consistency makes it easier to observe patterns over time because the preparation itself isn't changing. Another discussed extract is sensorial, which differs significantly because it uses both the root and the leaf. That changes the compound profile quite a bit, and it often is described as more concentrated. To me, that means it shouldn't be thought of as a stronger version of the same thing. It's actually a different preparation altogether and may have many different effects. There are also newer extracts like shodan, which are standardized to be very high concentrations and designed to work at much lower amounts. That raises different questions for me as a person learning, not just about intensity, but how potency changes the quality of an experience. And I have not tried either of the Soradil or Shodan. I have only been using KSM66 for this case study. One thing I'm learning is that higher standardizations doesn't automatically mean more appropriate. Changing concentration can change how the herb feels in the body, not just how noticeable it is. I have noticed this because for about 2 to 3 days, I tried to take ashwagandha in the morning and ashwagandha mid-afternoon, a little bit later in the afternoon. Nothing variably changed, like at all, but there was a noticeable loss of something whenever I stopped and continued to just do the one in the morning. Right now, I'm not going to try to compare these different extracts directly. Doing that too early would introduce too many variables at once. For me, understanding one clearly defined one, KSM66, before exploring variations is more important than having more knowledge on all the variations. And this is why structure matters so much in this learning process. When preparations change, the experience can change, and that deserves careful, separate observations, and case studies. This is something I plan to explore slowly in future logs. For this case study, the focus stays on observation, not optimization. What this case study taught me wasn't just about ashwagandha, it reinforced how important structure and restraint are for learning, especially as my first documented case study. It showed me how easy it is to want results and how much more valuable it is to observe patiently. And I want to be clear again, this is my own personal learning process. I'm not telling anyone else to try this, and this isn't medical advice. This is what a beginner self-case study looks like for me. Future case studies will follow the same structure, but consistency matters more than being theatrical. Thanks for listening. Eventually, I will get into more herbs and more things. This specific case study was made before the YouTube channel, so there is not any live footage or anything like that. So, documentation will change over probably in the next video when I switch over to the next herb I would like to do a case study on. Thanks for watching, and I hope y'all have a nice day.